I've been sitting here watching Everyday Astronaut, and his last two YouTube videos have all been about interviewing Elon Musk, and they're actually at the SpaceX facility. Man, Elon Musk is like, he's all over the place. Now I know what my wife has to deal with, and me and all the crap I got going on. Whew. It's almost exhausting to watch these YouTube videos back to back, because he's jumping all over the place mentally. It's crazy. Well, gentlemen, we're here to talk about this beautiful 16 pill that's in a 24 pill cabinet. I did this amplifier many moons ago. This was a DI box, or no. This had Toshiba's in it. I just went through and upgraded it and retuned it and got it lined out for my buddy. The main problem with this box was that when it was built, it was in this weird time. If you chart the path of things as they go through their lineage of progression, it's like we had this constant high quality of stuff coming out of xforce. The same. Carl owned it and everything was running good, and Carol and them guys were doing everything, and then Arlen took over, and for like the first 6 months everything stayed the same. Then we started to see quality drop, and then drop again, and then drop again, then drop again, then out of business. So this was one of those boxes that was produced for Bob over at Bullet Bob Burns CB, and it was just like right when we first saw the quality drop. And what we saw drop off in the very beginning was the quality of wire. Believe it or not, Teflon wire is expensive. This stuff is not cheap, and it's only getting more expensive by the day. Okay, so I mean, if you want to give brilliance, use the term brilliant. Arlen discovered that he could use non-Teflon based wire in certain places in the box and everything be okay ish, kind of, sorta. It ends up actually being a big problem, especially if the box ever gets hot. So this particular amp, what the deal was none of the control cables in here going from any of the switches were Teflon. So everywhere through here, I'm taking my soldering iron, not Teflon, not Teflon. Touching here, not Teflon. Touching this wasn't Teflon. Touching this, all the input transformers weren't Teflon. None of the chokes were Teflon, which is bad. You get hot and the jacket of the wire falls off, and then you've got a massive short and a huge imbalance that takes place inside the box, right? So I went through on this particular amplifier and rewrapped everything. I did all the on-off switches, the sideband delay, which is just a relay delay, because this box does not have sideband in it, even though the face of this thing has got an SSB sticker on it. That is just for grins. That all that does is adds a little bit of delay. There's a capacitor that's down here on the keep coming tripod, there we go. There's a capacitor that's down here on the inside of this thing that all it does is help hold the relay shut a little bit longer if the dead key gets a little bit too low. Okay, so I went through and I completely rewired this box with all Teflon. Now it's got Teflon on everything in here. All the chokes, none of the chokes were Teflon, none of the input transformers are Teflon. It was this weird funky, we had such long pieces of it that we were able to pull the numbers, and the first clue was that there was numbers printed on the wire. Okay, you can't print anything to Teflon. That's why they make printers for Teflon wire, but what it is heat shrink that you can print on, put over the wire, and then heat shrink it down, and it stays on the wire. I know that there's actual printing process for that kind of wire, because they do it in aircraft all the time. I remember seeing a Teflon wire printer, like on the inside of an airplane, what they do with some wires in certain styles of airplane, you have to use Teflon on everything for the most part. Teflon, 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 Teflon based wire. Okay, so silver plated copper stranded wire, awesome stuff, right? That's what we build everything out of. But they have a machine that you could literally just pull the wire through, or it'd run it through, and somehow it had a stamping process on it. I've seen it. I watched this guy one time at my dad's old job. Everybody has their own set of skills that they're really, really good at, right? So his thing was, yeah, he had all the airframe power plant stuff in his head, like he could do all the engine work and everything else, but he really was good at doing wiring, right? So imagine having a CAN plug that's got 150 plugs of wire going into it, and then that breaks off and goes into a harness and turns into a spaghetti thing, and it takes off and goes throughout the whole plane. Well, he was the guy that could literally pull that whole thing out of the airplane and figure out where all those wires and connectors went and be able to test, certify, and label all that shit and do it with his eyes shut, where for the normal mortal, like myself included, it's a little much, right? But he was really gifted at that, and so I always seen him sitting over at this machine. He'd have to, they'd go through, and after so many hours, they've determined that this one plug that's mounted in this one place on the inside of a Falcon 50 or a Learjet 55 or 35 or Gulfstream or whatever, there's enough vibration at this plug that they can certify it for X amount of hours. Well, once this part times out, they've got to take that whole plug apart and redo all the connections and recertify it, and that allows them to have X and more amount of hours worth of flight to do it safely, because remember, it's human rated. Well, they have a number code that's on all the wires, or they'd literally just print on it what it was. It'd be like sensor lead 12 for auxiliary fuel flow fire extinguisher admission systems or some shit that they'd print on the wire or stamp it on the wire. Now, in my experience with true Teflon wire, PTFE wire, you can't really write to it, nothing sticks to it. Like Sharpie, you draw on it, won't stay. You paint it, the paint peels off, nothing really sticks that well. So someday, if I ever had a free moment and my mind was completely cluttered free and I would sit down, I'd probably do some research on that. But as far as we're concerned, Teflon, the way we use it is we use it in a high temperature, high solder heat environment that we can't have the jacket of the wire break down. So the input transformers on this were all wound with this weird marine wire that had print on it. And then all the on-off wire and all that stuff had this weird marine wire in here. So I probably did a couple dozen videos at least where I had to go through and completely rewire the whole box and then go back to the customer. Okay, well, so I changed out the 23 wires that were inside the box. That's going to be $300. What? $300? Yes. Cost of wire, cost of time. You basically have to take everything that would be assembled outside of the box, take it apart, assembled in the box, and then reassemble it with the right components that should have been in there from the first place and not damage anything else. It's a skill inside of itself. I'm not saying that this is rocket science, because it is not. But that's what the deal is with this box. Now, Arland was building these for a little while where he had everything spaced out. You've seen several Blue Label boxes come through here lately. The one that I did, the 10 pill that I just rebuilt, it was a 2 drive-in 8 that I turned into a straight 10. I can't remember. I think I repilled this box. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. These are actually legit Toshiba transistors that are in this thing. It's got all the good parts and all the right places. Metal CAD caps. This was a big deal. He decided at one point that he wanted to not spend the money for these, and he went to another way. He was using these big orange disc capacitors, and he went down to using little small SMAs, but the quality of the SMAs was so low they weren't holding it. SMA thing works as long as you have a high enough quality surface mount capacitor in this place. But those surface mount capacitors are almost as expensive as these. The problem is the metal clads are really hard to get a hold of. There's only one company in the world that makes them. It's a giant nightmare. locating a lot of these parts, because we don't commonly build with a lot of this stuff anymore, is a nightmare. But we're still pushing forward and pioneering and trying to get her done. So inside of this box has never been burned up. It got gone through before we ended up having any serious issues with heat, either it be from the assembly of the device or from it being in operation, was able to cause the wire to break down and to have a short imbalance, and then the box burned to the ground. So this thing is pristine. It is in an actual 24 pill enclosure, which means massive more heat sink. I mean, your standard 16 pill enclosure that we would use normally is significantly smaller. Here, let me grab this empty 16 pill cabinet I got sitting over here. Today, if you showed up and you wanted to get a 16 pill enclosure, or 16 pill, it'd show up and look like that. That's the style of cabinet. So there's like 4 or 5 more inches, maybe 6 more inches worth of heatsink per side. This is more better than this. This is perfectly adequate. This is overkill. My very first 16 pill I ever got from, or I ever had, that was mine, was an xforce 16 pill built in a 24. And I ran that for a couple months, and then I very quickly upgraded to filling in the last little slots. So for a couple of years, Carl would build you in an oversized cabinet, a 16 pill, but he'd leave the last 4 slots in the cabinet open, front and back. So you still had the most, the more heat sink, so you have more heat sink dissipation. Hence that, transistors would run cooler and the life of the box would be more. I built one where I kicked these out like this, and I'm not saying I was the one that gave the innovational idea, because it's been told to me by dozens of people that people have done this long before I came along and long before Arlen came along. But he started building them in mass like this, where he was kicking everything out. And the thing I didn't like about it is that you got to change your capacitance just a little bit here on the input to compensate for the different wire length between the combiner. It just wasn't as neat as I like it. The wire organization is what I'm talking about. This box is awesome, and it's run forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. It's got super overkill wire coming out of the back of it. For a long time, everything was built with dual strips, and they would use 6 gauge, and it wasn't just the wire size wasn't quite right. So if you sit there and you'd run it, you'd watch it on a FLIR, and you could see that the little 6 gauge wire coming out of the back of the amp was getting a little bit warmer than it should, or what I'd like to think be comfortable, because it's acting like a resistor. You're pulling more current than the wire could carry. So, but we've overcome all those issues, and the guy that we're spending all this time talking about is no longer doing none of this. But it's got a giant oversized relay in it, giant oversized relay, and this box is built true to xforce style way back when. It truly is. Okay, history lesson over. Let's put the lid on it. Let's run it. Okay, so we got 24 pill set up. Now, this amp's really pretty. A previous customer really liked green, so the on-off LED and the sideband LED are green. And then he had me put green LED strip down the inside of the amp. So it sits here and it glows this nice, beautiful green all the time. I wish they would have stayed with the slotted fin system like this. But it is what it is. They're just not built like this anymore. So let's walk around the workbench here real quick, and let's get ourselves our unit of measures established. That's a 1,000 watt slug in 5 times. So we're going to be reading that middle scale. 50 is 5, 50 is 5,000, 40 is 4,000, 30 is 3,000. Use a 1,000 watt slug in average, which we're going to pin it in the corner. 5 watt slug in reverse, back from the Bird 10,000 watt dummy load. And I often chuckle to myself, I swear to God I'm going to be in hell having to say that. Over and over and over again. 1,000 watt slug and peak, 1,000 watt slug and average, 5 watt slug and reverse. Back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. We've got our power supply biased. And what I mean by that is we've got it loaded, preloaded. We're running at 15.5. And then when we key, this will drop down to 14.8, give or take. And this voltmeter we all know floats. So we've got the Godzilla 2x4. This came back to me. Apparently I loaned this to my business partner in Texas and I totally forgot he even had it. I think when he came up here to get his 24 pill installed or something, I don't remember. There's so much stuff ago, I don't remember. So I was down there, he gave this back to me here, and I brought it home and went all the way back through it because it's been so long since I built it. I didn't even really remember doing it. This is a 2x6 cabinet. It's a 1 drive and 2 drive and 6 cabinet that's in here. And it's a standard 4 pill, 2 drive and 4 configuration. But every square millimeter of the inside of this amp is built full of caps. And it makes 13 and some change, depending on the voltage that you've got on, 13 and some change of drive with like a 25 or 30 watt radio. I went and put new power wires in it, put a big fan in it. It's got a magnetic filter. So it's got a screen mesh that's on the inside of this thing, but it's actually magnetic to capture any metal particulate and hold on to it, which is good because you want to keep that out. A lot of people don't want to even think about paying for those screens because they vary in price depending on their quality, from a couple dollars all the way up to about $15 to $20 a piece. This is the one that's got the supposed flat neodymium material in it. Whatever, it's not the case. There's no way that you can make neodymium material that thin to maintain a magnetic field, but it's a very fine mesh screen that's on the top of this thing, and then of course the metal fan guard on the outside. But a bigger heat sink, that kind of stuff. I mean, I would want a small fortune for this. It seems like every time I build myself any kind of amplifier for anything, somebody shows up and they've got to have it. I'm like, they've got to have it. Okay, fine, I'll build another one. I sent this one off with my buddy. He's doing a bunch of different stuff with his mobile now, so this was a delete, and while I was there, he's like, here, take this with you, it's yours. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, if you say so. I honestly remember selling it to him, just saying, but he's like, take it with you. So okay, no problem, not gonna argue. Yeah, so those are our units of measure. Of course, we're gonna use a 2950 up here. I'll show you the input tune. It's a 5 watt slug and reverse. Of course, that's going to be biased also because this is our jumper lead for our 2950. It's also got to pass through the 2x4 itself. And it's coming out and going through coax of the Gods 2, going through the amplifier, coming out and going through RG400 out the bird dummy load through all the different line sections of impedance bump, impedance bump, impedance bump. It has dawned on me today that every single time somebody comes over here, they got to rob one of my 3-foot jumpers. I don't have any more 3-foot RG400 jumpers made. So I can tell you what something I'm going to do this weekend. I got to make a 9-foot jumper for a buddy of mine down in California. I'm going to bang that out for him, then I'm going to make myself some new jumpers. I swear to God, I did a bunch of these the other night. Where they're at, no one knows. Okay, enough talk, more do. So, first off, let's turn the amp on. And let's go over here. So we're going to grab the 2950 all by itself, so it's about 25-ish worth what? Okay, I can't do that. I'm thinking everybody's seen this a million times. Here. We'll shut off the 24. It's in 5X. So that's what 20 watts looks like on 5X. So let's do it this way. Audio. Making about 1100 watts with 20 watts of drive. Relay latches at 1 watt. Okay? Okay. Shut that off. Turn on our driver now. So we've turned on the Godzilla 2x4. A 400 bird, about 1100 peak, give or take. Now we'll turn on the 24 pill. About 4100 and pinning 1000 water in the corner. Nothing schmancy about it. It's just doing its thing. 16 pill with Toshiba transistors that'll last you an eternity. With green backlit. So let's have a little bit of fun now. Let's see, can we still see the amp meter? We cannot. Let's see what the Chinesium amp meter says that we're pulling. And this is both amps, by the way. It's the 16 pill and the 2x4 driver. Audio 1 2 1 2. So like I said, we're floating underneath full load. 16 pill is definitely dropping down to around 14 and a half. So we could probably crank the power supply up and get this to do more. 43, 4500, you know. Turn the voltage up. Woo! It's Toshiba's. It'll handle it. It's not going to freak out and die, but in the same breath, $250 a piece transistors in here. Just saying. Haven't done this in a while. So it's now a 5,000 watt slug in the middle hole, 1,000 watt and 5 times in the right hole. Let's see what we're actually getting out of it for bird now. About 1900 watts in bird, still our 4,000 watts. Now, there's this button over here. It goes to an actual bird peak meter, okay? I prefer this meter. It's not as generous as the bird meter. Keep that in mind. According to the bird peak kit, this thing's making 5,000 plus watts peak power. There's a reason I leave that off. It's too generous. So let's have ourselves a little bit of fun now. That one fan and just the size of this cavity is, and when I mean cavity is, I mean the inside of the cabinet. It just rumbles air around. Okay. See, is this that's the ICOM? Here. Let's hook up the derail Cobra 29. And let's see what we can get out of this for maximum bird. So let's go over here once again. Let's shut this off. Hello, audio. Jeez. Okay, so this is just the 2x4. This is just the 2x4 now. Hello, audio. Peak meter saying 1200. The bird meter with the derail radio is saying 700-ish. Oh, port 24 pill, you're going to work hard now. Please note the peak number is not going to change. It's going to stay probably about 39 to 4,000. But watch what it does. Remember, we're only getting 12 to 17 bird out of this. 3,200 bird average. Isn't that odd how that works? So when people say stupid shit to me like, you know, you only key it and it gives you 10 bird, but then you got 300 peak. Yeah, it's the radio. It's not the amplifier. Your amp does not determine your bird watts. The radio does. Okay, so bird watts, average power, RMS, whatever you want. Your radio determines all of that, by the way, for the most part, depending on which slang term you want to use, because there's so many terms that everybody uses. There is no correct one. I've covered this in multiple videos. Let's look at how many amps this thing pulls now with the derail radio driving it. You're seeing around 500, like 480 or 490, something like that. Audio. 300 amp increase. 220 to 300 amp increase. Depending on it. If you want to do the math, it's somewhere in that number. And the only thing that changed is the average numbers changed over here on the meter. This number changed. That didn't change. It's all about the radio. So that's a lot of shmoo coming out of that cabinet. I mean, that's a lot of shmoo. If you think about it, 800 amps worth of draw, and all we did was change the radio, and we're seeing 3,000 bird. The box is perfect. We don't need to change anything. So I go in there and I could add a bunch of parts to it, and we can maybe squeak another couple hundred watts out of it, but this thing is running titties. It's got the good transistors in it, made in the good cabinet with the good heat sink, good power wire on it, good connections, good fans. It's good. I'm not selling this for me. I'm selling this for a customer. He's got a price of $4,500 on this. It's worth every penny, honest. So you guys know how this works. First one of y'all that calls me gets it. $4,500 plus the ride. The cost of shipping has gone way up here recently with the huge increase in fuel. You think about what we were paying for fuel this time last year. It's gone up, doubled. I mean, I don't know what you all are paying down where you all live, but I was just in Texas and they were paying a couple dollars a gallon. We're paying $4.50, $4.25. Place in California are paying over $6. I'm saying, the cost of shipping's gone up a little bit. You're gonna have to expect to spend a couple $100 to get this shipped safely to wherever its new home goes. So just keep that in mind. Call this number here. You all know how to reach me. Shoot me a text, call me, and we'll get you done. 16 pill in an oversized 24 pill case, old school xforce. It's got a blue label on it, but hardly any blue label parts in it. See ya. Bye.